I want to be just like Hugh Downs. At 73, his life would make a 30-year-old tired. We talked when he came to Atlanta for a UNICEF board meeting, and you can see him at his regular job every Friday night, right here on Channel 2.
From ABC News.
He's been the literal and figurative anchor on ABC's original news magazine show since its inception 16 years ago.
This is 2020.
First, one of the most dangerous men you'll ever meet.
Before that, a 3-year stint at PBS in a series targeted to older Americans. He's been a game show host, and he's played the straight man to some of America's greatest comedians. His easygoing manner and unflappability landed him his first national break during the early years of The Tonight Show. It happened when mercurial host Jack Paar announced he was leaving.
He had told me an hour before we went on the air. He said he was leaving the show. He was so upset at what had happened the night before. They bleeped a joke of his. He shouldn't have told it. They shouldn't have bleeped it. That was what I later said on the air. He said he was leaving, and the surprise to me was he left at the beginning of the show instead of the end, and left me with the program. It was a fierce spotlight, and it did my career a lot of good, I think.
Indeed, NBC tapped Downs to replace John Chancellor on the Today Show, and for the next 9 years, he greeted Americans every morning. It was on the Today Show that Downs and longtime friend Barbara Walters first met.
You were responsible for getting Barbara Walters on the air at the Today Show.
Yeah, I was. She was a writer and a producer, and she, in fact, produced the segment that welcomed me onto the program. She was there before I was. And she got with my wife and got pictures of me as a baby and all kinds of stuff in this little bio thing. And I was impressed with her production ability. But when
so impressed that when an on-air opening became available, he tried to convince the network brass to move Walters from behind the camera.
And they said, such as, and I said, such as Barbara Walters. And they said, she's a writer. I said, you know how life typecasts you? I said, yeah, she's a writer, but she's good-looking and she's bright, and I think she'd do well on the air.
First of all, every day I had to go and look at fashion shows. And then I had to have lunch at Maxime's and drink champagne. And then I had to smell all the perfume at Dior. I mean, it was so trying that I took absolutely the very last plane I could to get back here today.
I didn't discover her. She discovered herself. But I always talk like a midwife when I talk about Barbara's career. But I'm kind of glad that I did that.
And then it was funny that so many years later, when you were just doing 2020 alone, and they came to you and said, we want to add Barbara Walters, you were opposed to it.
Yeah, no, I was opposed to it. ABC wanted a place for Barbara, and they pressured me for that, and I resisted it at first, even though I liked working with Barbara, and I could get her to do features on the program. But the first thing I did was I said to her, I don't want this, because I worry about whether it will really improve the show. I need to share the host duties. And finally they kept after me, and my wife finally said, look, why, you know, this is an age of teams, why not have Barbara on it? So I said, okay, and I did, and I was glad to have been wrong, because I think she's been a great boon as a co-host.
Hugh Downs has the kind of job that can often mix business with pleasure.
At this moment, I intend to go around the world in 24 steps.
He's trekked to the South Pole.
In the position I took, grabbing the fins and lying flat, I unknowingly gave the whale the signal to take me for a dive. I decided not to go along.
And rode a killer whale.
As I got on again, she looked me straight in the eye. I stayed up on my knees, and that way got a long and unforgettable ride.
He learned to fly for a TV story.
And then somebody said, well, why don't you do it? I didn't have a license. I'd done a little bit of training before the war. And I said, that's a good idea, because if I do it, first of all, I'd like to get a license. And secondly, I think there's more rapport with the viewer on grounds that they identified with me more. And I think they could feel that if I could do it, anybody could do it. And so I went ahead and got my license based on that. But it so hooked me on aviation that I went ahead and got other ratings, you know, seaplane and boat and float and glider tow and hot air balloon and multi-engine. I went on into other aspects of it.
Is this the adventurer in you?
I don't know. The truth is I'm a devout coward, and I try to stack the cards in my favor as much as possible, but there are things I like to do, you know. And I don't have a desire to set records of any kind, but I like to, on grounds that if another human being has done this, I'm a human being, therefore I can do it.
I know scuba diving is truly one of your great loves.
Yeah, I like that.
What is this that you get underwater that you get nowhere else?
When I'm scuba diving and I'm really under the surface, it feels like I've gone back to a really deep ancestral home. There's something about the sea that is, I maybe psychologically return to the womb or something, but I enjoy being in that floating milieu where you just, you don't have to exert energy, you float around like a fish.
But a diving story almost turned into tragedy when his mask came loose.
I didn't lose the mask. I had a hold of it, and I got it back on, and they photographed that, and I looked like I was very calm doing that. I said, you got to understand that if you're too dumb to realize the danger you're in, that can be mistaken for bravery, I think. But I don't react fast to danger, and that's maybe a good thing because I don't panic.
An invaluable trait in broadcasting.
But I am interested in a lot of things, and I'm the world's champion dilettante. I dabble in everything.
It's true. As an adult, he studied for an advanced degree in geriatric medicine. He's built his own telescope, and among all of his writings, including 7 books, is an article on astrophysics.
Mr. Downs, to me, you are the Renaissance man. You do lots of things. You learn lots of things. How do you find the time to do new things, and why?
Well, the time is a weird thing, and if you have to make it, they say. I reasoned once when I wanted to read a book list, and I thought this is going to take me 13 years. At the time, I thought it would take me 7, but I said, take me 7 years. 7 years from now, I'll be 7 years older than I am now if I haven't read anything. So I might as well have read the books in the meantime.
Let's talk about the love of your life, Ruth.
Uh-huh.
How have you all been married 50 years with all the stuff you do?
Well, partly because we do it together. We always have been a team, and I think that's one way. And we travel together and everything. That's part of the secret, but the real secret is not that you do all those things in order to stay married for 50 years. It's because you do what you want to do, and that's what we want to do. And
you may not know that Hugh Downs is colorblind, and one of Ruth's tasks is to coordinate his wardrobe. She does it by sewing matching tags on his suits, ties, and shirts.
Being colorblind is kind of an amusing disability because it really does result in funny things. Like I guess I was about 13 years old, walking with a cousin of mine, and he said, the grass is getting green. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, it's spring and the grass is getting green. And I said, what color has it been? And he said, brown. And to this day, if I see a patch of melted snow and there's grass there, I look at it and it seems green until I think, no, it's not supposed to be green yet. It's winter. It's supposed to be brown. And I don't know.
Right now, the future is clear for Hugh Downs. He and Ruth will continue to spread their visits between their 2 children, their homes in New York and Arizona, and his regular job at ABC. But if you want to know how someone could do something well for more than 50 years, listen to his story of how he started in broadcasting. The year, 1939. The place? A tiny radio station in his home state of Ohio. A young Hugh had been told by his dad to find a regular paying job.
And I stopped in and said to this receptionist, how do you become a radio announcer? And she said, we have auditions on Tuesday. The program director appeared in the doorway and he said, I can listen to you now. So I said, oh, great. So I went in the studio and he gave me a copy from a paint store. And he said, when that red light goes on up there, you read this. And I waited, the red light came on, and I read this commercial. And the red light went out, and pretty soon he came in, he said, that was very bad. He said, that was really terrible. He said, but with a little training, he said, great oaks from little acorns grow. And I went home and told my dad, and my dad said, well, I want you to continue looking for a job for another week, and he said, if you can't find a job, go with a radio station. As far as my dad is concerned, I never found a job. I never did. I haven't to this day.
You can see Hugh performing his non-job in a few minutes on 2020, and it looks as if he'll be there for a while. He recently signed a 3-year contract. And along with his journalism awards, Hugh Downs is listed in the Guinness Book of World Records. The former radio announcer holds the most on-air network hours of anyone, more than 10,000. I'll be right back.